Anita Nelson, Chief Strategy Officer of Skanska USA Building. In my day job, I manage about 100 individuals across the US in 17 different locations in different groups such as marketing, business development, emerging technology, market strategy, and business strategy and planning. My day job can be anything from looking at new technology to thinking about markets we want to break in or clients that we want to get to know better.
And I'm Tim Johnson, General Manager here in Portland, Oregon. I oversee about 300 folks around Portland and Southwest Washington. And we're here to talk about the leader of the future. And Anita, I don't know what you're seeing, but I know definitely I'm looking at a drain in the industry right now, and an obvious demographic shift is happening. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think what's really interesting about the overall dynamics of our workforce right now is we've got 4 different generations happening, and different things are happening to those 4 different generations. So we've got a shift in, those folks retiring and all the knowledge that they have. We've got people coming into the industry or people that we'd like to come into the industry that we're competing with the Googles and the Amazons, as well as construction tech startups. Effectively, we're really looking at a number of different dynamics. And there's no shortage of opportunities, as you know, but the backlog of new entrants into the industry is limited because those STEM graduates are seeking employments in other industries. And you and I talk about this all the time is how can we make construction more sexy? We know why we're in construction. I can't get more excited, especially actually this weekend. I'm based in New York, and there's quite a bit of work still happening down at Ground Zero, and the impact of that work couldn't be more exciting as a New Yorker and as an American. And so it's really tying the stories of the purpose of the work that we do to the work that we do to get people into the industry. And I think working at a company like Skanska, you get to touch on all of that. And you and I think the other thing we talk about often is this is a people business, and we've got to get comfortable talking about people. The generations that make up about half of our workforce now, they want to talk more. They want to get more feedback. It's a different kind of dynamic. And with a workforce that's been traditionally male and engineers, we've got to get, a different approach out there. We've got, I think, so many open opportunities, and only 6% of our industry are African Americans, 9.1% are women. And when you think about the next generation of workers, there's a whole untapped series of folks out there that could really help change the dynamics of how we work.
Yeah, where are we gonna get them from, right? How do we go chase them down? How do we get them interested? I know that I work with ACE Mentorship and another number of other organizations around Portland just to take high school students and try to get them interested in engineering and construction, into the trades, something just to show them, hey, it's not all about Google, Facebook. Construction is here, and we built some really pretty cool things. So,
yeah, there's that. You want to tell the story of what a career in construction can look like. I think I go back to you want to think about people with non-traditional degrees. I'm not scared to say that I'm an English major. I went and got an MBA to justify my presence in a room doing a cost model on a mega project. But at the same time, somebody took a chance on me and offered me an opportunity, and I got to learn from some really, really wonderful, experienced people. So, there was a gentleman that took me aside who was a scheduler, and he taught me probably more than I'll ever remember, really, about how you lay out a job and plan a job and the different components that go into it. But it really just takes someone taking the time, right? And I think that's what ACE mentorship is about. That's what a lot of what we're talking about reverse mentorship is about, is combining sort of that decades long expertise with the, at the time, the value I added was I could take that guy's work and help make it better looking and easier for people to digest. And so everyone has something to offer. And when you put the diverse team together, in that case, it was, myself as a young whippersnapper and a 55, 60-year-old scheduler. And we kind of came out with some great things. And it's allowing that to happen is where you really get a lot of the magic when it comes to people. And so it's about how can you get more of those folks, whether it's the English majors of the world or people coming out of, psychology, which could be really interesting given we're such a people business, or different backgrounds, right? And I think that starts to set us up for different thinking, not only from a diverse set of genders and races and ethnicities and economic backgrounds, but also just intellects and, the different curiosities people have.
Yeah, I heard you on Friday when you said that you were an English major. One of our project execs here, she's an English major too, and it's amazing the compliments that we get. And she's worked her way through the construction industry and had to learn drawings and all that, but the compliments that we get from owners on how she communicates, and that trust she builds with those owners. I mean, she runs 2 major clients of ours here in Portland. It's pretty amazing to watch just that different personality than what you see come out of CEM school and stuff.
One of the things, we talked a little bit about the workforce drain, but the other thing that's evolving is really, the built environment, sort of what we're building and how we're building it. I mean, Tim, you've been in the industry over 27 years. Talk about what you've seen over the course of your journey.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like 20 some years of it, not a lot, right? I mean, I'd always say like air conditioning in the crane cabs or something but I guess I got to get over that. But in the last 5 years, it's pretty cool to see the changes that have happened. And it goes beyond, I guess, iPhones. And, I had the first colored laptop in our company. So that dates me right there. But, those changes happened. But now you look at the power that we have in phones and iPads and what we're utilizing those for on job sites is amazing. So.
Do you think that there's been, a change in, we're in a certainty business, right? And risk management is at the tip of what everyone does in the construction industry, and in the design and engineering world as well. Do you think that as we've all, I think, woke up in the past 18 months on what technology can do for us, I think one of the best things that I experienced in the past 18 months was a couple of agreements that we had signed to input technology for 360 cameras and a couple of other things really came in handy in the pandemic. And the adoption rate was so much more aggressive than it is normally for technology and construction. Whereas I think, the fun fact is that we're just behind farming and hunting on our use of technology as an industry. But I think, what clients wanted, even before the pandemic, during the pandemic, was certainty. They wanted answers, whether it's when a material is going to arrive, which is a challenge for the industry now, or, how long, what productivity gains or losses were achieved during the pandemic, all of that. So when we think about data-driven insights and predictive analytics and a workforce that's ready to embrace, new and different ways of working, do you think there's an opportunity for data in our space?
There is. And it's, I guess it goes from you bring up the 360 camera, right? And we were struggling, like, how does that play into our everyday lives? And we had adopted it as a standard here in Portland prior to COVID pandemic. But as that hit, all of a sudden it became a communications means, and it became part of the owners' meetings, and it got integrated almost overnight into how we utilize that. So yeah, the data, and to go back on your data question, we definitely have to start utilizing data differently than we have in the past. Law of averages and Excel spreadsheets, right? We need to get somewhere to a point where we're looking into the future and what is the information telling us, and throwing out the variables that are left and right and looking at variables that are more, why is that variable exist? And analyzing it to that extent. So, yeah.
What about sustainability? I mean, I think one of the things that when we talk about the future workforce, and I don't even think it's the future workforce, I think it's the now workforce. People want to be tied, to a bigger purpose. And when we talk about sustainability and what that means for the facilities or environment we build, there's a lot of opportunity there, whether it's from the data perspective, the technology perspective. How do we influence that arm of it I don't know whether it's partnering with design firms or we do quite a bit from our end for sure, but I think the nature of the buildings we build now, and how they might outlast all of us is really something to think about, how they'll evolve as the climate evolves.
Yeah, look at something that we do here in Portland, and we created this, we call it Ideation Lab, right? Where we have groups of folks come together that are from different backgrounds, and kind of back to that shifting demographics, but our accountants, our marketing folks, along with our operations folks, get together, they meet, and come up with ideas, their ideas as to what they want to talk about, not what we need or what we want, but what they need out at the job site level. And it's been a pretty phenomenal observation of watching just individuals that want to spend time and they want to put in an effort to research something that they're interested in that'll make a difference in their life. And you bring up sustainability. So, the green trailers and the adoption of just no carbon footprint, having somewhere cool to go to work every day makes that difference. I like some of the other stuff that we've had come up through the ideation labs. Our accounting department and operations got together and said, how do we facilitate this communication quicker, faster, and that adoption throughout the company? But tying back into the leader of the future, you've got to have a leader that is looking at how to utilize folks and how to allow them to communicate and giving them platforms to communicate on, but not necessarily give them direction and giving them a prescriptive outcome. You want to have that open environment where they can talk about anything, chase anything, make a difference in what their lives or somebody else around them that they see.
Yeah, I think what you're touching on is with the shifts in, the built environment itself, what's happening in the world in the face of who's building, right?
Yeah.
There's a different type of management. And I think a big part of creating innovation in any team is creating space for it. And we're in, like I said earlier, we're in the certainty business. There's not a lot of room for error, and time to think through and create and ideate sometimes, takes away from, time spent avoiding error. So it's thinking about, leading those creative teams and making space for that while also balancing the day-to-day needs of every project, every office, every business. And I think you've done a great job with that with the ideation labs, but the same level of space for innovation and creativity is also, I think, leading a diverse team requires the same kind of intent. You want to see the management of different generations, and that's posing a challenge. But when you give everybody time to explain their perspective, you can connect the analytical nature of a millennial in a data system with the anecdotal stories of somebody who's been doing this for 40 years and has seen everything. And I think that's where the magic happens, right? That's where, when you bring it all together and you give everyone space to add their perspective, you start to see thriving teams. And I think we see it in pockets more and more, but as managers, as leaders, we have to sort out how we meet all of the requirements of running a business and the pressures that we all are under financially, risk management wise, from clients, in our personal lives, all of that pressure, and managing that while also providing that space for teams to come together and create and bring perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the risk, right? So I take my accounting example, right? And it was just a group that had an accountant in there and operations. I think there was a marketing person in that group, and they got to talking about people, right? Well, maybe that's why it took off. No, but if you think about it, they saw risk, but not how we would see it, right? They're managing risk, and it's their time is being wasted because they're looking at numbers and making sure this number is accurate to this number instead of using the data. And they finally sat down and said, this is dumb. Why are we looking at this? And we got to go come up with a system that compares the numbers and just tells us. That actually gives those folks more time to really look at the risks, because their risk that you're having them manage is just double input errors, right?
Exactly, right.
Which could cause a lot of damage, but get rid of that. And they got rid of it. And I think that's when you talk about, again, leaders of the future, you want that open platform to allow folks to go and drive change and get rid of the risks that you were having them look at, or risks that they perceive versus what you perceive is totally different. So
yeah, and you have to make that room to maximize opportunities and minimize challenges, and that's exactly what that team did.
Yeah.
It was really seeing that challenge as an opportunity, because once they can find a way to do that more efficiently, that allows them more time to think creatively about what else might happen.
Right.
How else might that's been impacted? So I think a lot of this drives those critical traits needed for leaders. And, we keep talking about the future, and I still argue it's also today. And it doesn't mean that the knowledge and expertise of the current leaders that we have in our place isn't indispensable. I learn every day from people that I pray keep working as long as they can. But the skill sets of the future are going to need to be not only transactional or linear, but analytical and creative. And I think a lot of people who go into engineering and construction have those muscles, but for decades now, given the sort of repetitive nature of problem solving in the field and in construction, they only get to flex them when it's in a reactive mode, right? There's not a lot of proactive creativity unless you're looking at risk management. So we got to focus on growing and developing those leaders to flex all of those skill sets. So I think it'd be fun for us to break down what we think those are. I guess we could start with analytical, because I think that's where we both get really excited.
Yeah, but what's interesting is I'm part of this shift, and we're losing people in construction because we are so risk adverse and the pressure is so high. And we're not using the data that we have, and we're not trusting the data that we have. We've got to change that.
Right, and it's almost, you've got to go from not just reporting what happens and making sure all of those data sets are correct, but forecasting what's next, like the ability to balance that microscopic view and the telescopic view of looking backward and forward. I think. Yeah. We talked quite a bit about digital literacy during the pandemic, because it's not just about leaders and teams, but the broader organization that has to feel excited and inspired and empowered to learn and contribute. And I keep thinking about maps. I'm a big map person, I'm an amateur geography person, I guess. But when I look at information, I want to see it mapped. I want to see it visually, right? That's how I can capture it. And when we were looking at, our COVID impacts, we looked at them, based on overlaying where we saw major issues with the pandemic, and then what that would mean for the work we had in place ongoing in a project. And we were able to visualize that data and solve those problems. It's interesting that looking at that information, as well as how the pandemic was impacting all of our markets and our clients. This is one of the only times in recent memory, for me, I guess the 2008 downturn also was pretty rough, but not as immediate. The impact on all of our client sets overnight, whether it was aviation, higher education, healthcare, everyone had some level of disruption, and tracking that information and capturing that data and understanding what that could mean, not only for us, but for our communities, and putting that to work as a business was something that we saw come alive in our teams during this time. And I think that goes back to, you can take all the data you want and get to predictive at some point if you invest the right time and effort and scope around the right challenges. But if you don't focus on what I would say the next big area of skill set is its creativity and creating that environment to allow for that thinking, you're not gonna be able to take advantage of it, right? We had all this reporting coming out, everyone was giving us information, and I kept saying, so what? And what does that mean? And I think that's where the ideation labs were fantastic, because we had you had an example of a company designing for a future pandemic, right?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Well, and imagine you start talking about data, and imagine a world where, right now we use in construction. Obviously, there's other companies that use it far more in depth, but imagine a world where we start talking about, and I use this example all the time. We talk about, well, are we good at that, doing that type of building? Or are we bad at doing that type of building? Or, well, we have window leaks. We know that we have window leaks, and that's a problem we got to address. But imagine when the data gets to a point and you're actually analyzing, what are the issues with the window leaks? What are the issues with that type of building or this type of building that we don't go build it? and we start focusing on those issues at hands. And when you start talking about the law of averages, right? A lot of people just look at the median or law of averages. That doesn't allow you to actually fix the problem. It just says yes or no. No, I can't go do it. And you keep doing that long enough, eventually you can't do anything because you've hamstrung yourself. So
right, because you want to get to fixing the window. Right?
Yeah. Or building the building.
Right. And when we're all trained to focus on risk, and we've got to get better at making that space to respond to risk and managing the response to risk, right? Yeah. It's two things, right? And I think data, when you think about analytical skill sets, when people go into engineering, they have creative and analytical skills already, right? You don't get through AP physics or even, base geometry without being creative and analytical, without being able to see and think, things that aren't necessarily right in front of you. So it's not necessarily that people don't have those skills. It's that we need to kind of reawaken them in a lot of ways. I think ideation labs are a great way to do that. And also just asking people for ideas. I've been in a lot of rooms of late, particularly in the past 18 months, maybe they were virtual though, where someone had an idea and people took the time to say, hey, that could work. Well, what do we think about that? Where could that be deployed? And in the emerging technology space, it's just that. We see something working on one issue and we say to ourselves, well, this might solve another problem. And I think about 360 cameras that we were thinking of safety utilization. We were thinking of, managing productivity and monitoring productivity. And now we're using them as it relates to social distancing or other things that made it a lot easier for us to manage and navigate challenges that came up in the middle of a global pandemic. So it's almost like taking one innovative idea and deploying it on another. And you want those creative people thinking about that. I think the last thing that comes up to me, and I'm sure you have strong feelings about this, is around inclusion and empathy, and really those soft skills that when I joined construction, I was told, to put those in a box and leave that box under my bed for a lifetime if I wanted to live in this industry for a long time. I think those are a must.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's funny you bring that up because there's a university down the street that we've been meeting with lately, and they have started an innovation minor. And the innovation minor isn't necessarily just limited to engineers. And usually when you hear from universities, it's come support my innovation department, and it's all based around R&D. As opposed to this innovation department's minor is now actually being set up as just teaching that train of thought. And they're bringing in the doctors and the nurses and their med schools and their vet schools and everything into this innovation minor. And so, yeah, you're getting a very diverse thought process being trained in college now, where that's going to pay off dividends in the future. And I think our leaders today need to pay attention to that because it's an open mind to listening to others that are going to occupy the building. And I know sometimes we bring in a doctor or a nurse for a hospital and ask them their opinion, but are they involved all the way through?
And we see that on job sites all the time. Yep. We are constantly thinking about the end user, right? Whether it's, my first large project was a hotel and casino and whole area around that. And you were listening to the casino managers and listening to the spa manager and understanding what their needs were. And we do that all the time on our projects, but we need to do that also with our people, our own employees, right? What do they need, to operate at their best? But I think these are sort of overlapping, right? It's the soft skills to be inclusive, to say, let's bring in that doctors and the nurses. It's your creativity to think to deploy one thing and apply it elsewhere, solve one problem with another, as they say. And then really all of this is done by, scientific analytical minds that went into this industry effectively because they're problem solvers, right? If I think about what you are on a construction site every day, it's you're a problem solver, right? There's always something. And whether you're on a job site or in a role like mine or yours, there's always something. We joke about you need 80% of your role to be relatively predictive so that you have 20% of your time to deal with the fires that come at you, not literally, but sometimes literally. And I think that's where it's really important that we navigate analytical, creative, and soft skills. And those were not the things that we've rewarded for the past, at least my almost 20 years in the industry, those were not always rewarded unless on accident, right? When someone brought those things together and they resulted in an improved bottom line, there was reward. But other than that,
and you checked every box all the way up, right?
Right. It wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't. It was accidental, not intentional, as they say. Right.
Yeah. We got to get more intentional about it.
Absolutely. So I know we're going to get the hook to wrap up today, and I'm sure the folks listening or watching are really curious, or at least I'm really curious to think about. We've talked a lot about opportunities and some shared history, but how are you feeling about all of this, Tim? Like, where are you at with looking at what's in front of us and what's behind you and where we can go?
I brought it up in the beginning, and I think about I've been in this industry 27, 28 years, and I look at the first 20 years. You would go try something, and it would have an impact, maybe on your project, maybe to your team, maybe to the office if you got lucky. But now I look at what's happened, and maybe the last 5 years, but really what's happened in the last 2 years, right? Things are changing fast. And when I see these ideas coming at us and we adopt them, you have to adopt them really quick, and you got to move very quick. But right now, you look at the billions that have been invested in the construction tech world, right? The changes that we make happen and have huge impacts to us, not just small impacts. A lot of what's happening right now has major impacts. I mean, look at Procore, the sponsor of Groundbreak, right? And how long they've been in the industry and how much of an impact just in the last 2 or 3 years their software has had. Or you brought up the 360 photos. I mean, those haven't been around very long, and the massive impact that those have had on job sites and communication is major. So I think, Anita, as we go forward, anything that we want to go do can have a large impact either on our company, on our companies, or on the industry as a whole, or our clients too.
Absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's why I'm in this industry, right? When you see what this industry can do, and how a neighborhood can be changed, how your school experience can change, just by a different facility or somebody thinking through a human student challenge, right? But I think the best part of what's happened in the past 18 months is the light that was turned on in this industry. Not only for technology, but for inclusion. You saw people's animals appearing on virtual meetings, and then you saw people's children rolling up and asking questions. There's stories of superintendents holding new babies in a virtual meeting with a client, and I'm inspired by that because I think of what it means for inclusion in general. But when we think about what that meant for, we've been talking about flexible work as an industry for a long time. And not only that, oftentimes you can't take a project site home with you. Well, not every day, but there may be times when you can. And we're looking into that. It's not solved, but based on how quickly we moved on technology, how quickly we've been moving as it relates to women in construction and diversity and inclusion, the work is not done in any of those areas. And it never will be, because there's always an evolution that's ahead of us and necessary. But the energy and the urgency with which we addressed those opportunities or challenges depends on how you see it. Today I'm glass half full, so I'm going to go opportunity. Has really been inspiring to me, and I think is where we're going to see the leaders of the future who can capitalize those opportunities really thrive. I'm excited.
So am I. It's going to be exciting times.
So that's it from us. Thank you all so much for listening. And thank you, Procore, for having us today.
Yes, thank you.